The mountain air was thin and sharp, tasting of pine and impending snow. Elias's boot crunched on the first frozen patch of gravel on the driveway, a sound that seemed obscenely loud in the immense, suffocating silence of the peaks. Before him, the cabin was a stark silhouette against the bruised purple and gray of the late afternoon sky. It was exactly as she described in her emails, a beautiful, brutalist structure of dark-stained logs built directly into the sheer granite face of the mountain, as if the earth itself had grown a house. His sister, Ilara, had bought it on a whim, calling it her creative retreat. Now, 3 weeks into her solitude, her emails had stopped. The ones he had received were off. Talk of whispers in the rock and the beautiful geometry behind the walls. Worry had curdled into dread, and now, as standing before the silent cabin, that dread was a cold stone in his gut. He didn't bother knocking. The heavy oak door was unlocked. Inside, the air was still and warm, smelling of cedar smoke and something else. A dry, ancient dust, like a tomb opened after centuries.
Ilara?
His voice was swallowed by the vastness of the main floor. It was stunning, a cathedral of wood and stone. Above him, a loft held 2 bedrooms, their glass doors veiled by sheer gray curtains, a walkway connecting them overlooking the great room. A monumental fireplace of rough-hewn stone dominated the far wall, its maw dark and cold. The kitchen was all polished black granite and modern appliances, a stark contrast to the rustic logs. Everything was neat, tidy, and utterly empty. The only light was the fading, gloomy twilight filtering through the large windows, painting everything in shades of charcoal and slate.
Ilara, it's Elias. Are you here?
He found the door near the kitchen, a modern one of plain wood, incongruous against the logs. It was slightly ajar. The sound was clearer now. Not a tap, but a soft, rhythmic scrape. 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 He descended the stairs into a different world. The cozy, rustic aesthetic ended abruptly. This was a construction zone. The walls were bare studs and fluffy pink insulation. The floor concrete, covered in a fine layer of gray dust. The air was colder here, and that dry tomb dust smell was overpowering. Work lights on tripods cast harsh, intersecting pools of halogen glare, creating deep, distorted shadows that seemed to twitch at the edge of his vision. And at the back of the room, the world ended. Ilara had knocked through the drywall, and then, it seemed, through the concrete foundation behind it. She had revealed the mountain itself, a wall of ancient striated granite, glistening faintly with moisture. And set into that living rock was a door. It was massive, made of a dull blackened iron, riveted with bolts the size of his fist. It was ajar, open just a foot, revealing a void of perfect blackness. That was where the scraping sound came from. From the darkness beyond the door.
Ilara?
He whispered, his throat tight. He stepped closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. The cave beyond the door wasn't a natural formation. The walls, just visible in the spill of work light, were too smooth, too perfectly geometric. They were carved, etched with spirals and angles that made his eyes water and his brain itch. They were wrong, those shapes. They followed a logic that was not of this world. The scraping stopped. A figure emerged from the darkness, and Elias stifled a scream. It was Ilara. But it wasn't. She was dressed in her usual paint-stained jeans and wool sweater, but her skin was pale, almost gray, and coated in a fine layer of that same ancient dust. In one hand, she held a mason's trowel. In the other, she clutched a large, smooth river stone. Her eyes were the worst. They were wide, unblinking, and utterly vacant, like polished stones themselves.
Ilara? My God, what have you done?
She didn't look at him. Her head was cocked as if listening to a faint, distant sound. A small, serene smile played on her lips.
It's so much bigger on the inside.
She murmured, her voice a dry rasp, like stones grinding together.
They've been sleeping for so long, but they're so lonely, they just want to be heard.
Who? Ilara, there's no one here.
Elias pleaded, stepping toward her, his hand outstretched. Her head snapped toward him, the movement unnervingly swift. The serene smile vanished.
Not out here.
She corrected him, her empty eyes finally focusing on him, seeing him but not seeing him.
In here.
She tapped her own temple with the trowel, leaving a dusty mark.
And in there.
She pointed the blade into the impenetrable blackness of the cave. The scrape. Scrape. Scrape started again, but this time it wasn't from her. It was from deep within the cave. A dozen, 100 scraping sounds, echoing, multiplying, coming closer. It was the sound of stone dragging against stone. Ilara's smile returned, wider now, a terrifying rictus grin.
They like your voice, Elias. It's so solid. They want to know how it works.
The blackness beyond the door began to shift. It wasn't a movement of light, but of substance. Shapes were coalescing in the deep gloom, figures of rough, assembled stone moving with a terrible, grinding slowness. They had no faces, only pits and jagged edges, and they were drawn toward the light and toward him by a loneliness older than time. Elias stumbled back, but his feet were leaden. The cave wasn't a space, it was a throat, and it was opening. Ilara took a step forward, the trowel held out like an offering.
Don't you want to stay?
She rasped, her voice now a chorus of whispers that seemed to emanate from the very rock around them.
Don't you want to be part of the mountain? It's so beautiful inside the walls. You can just stop and listen forever.
The things in the darkness reached the door. Their stony limbs, cold and irrevocable, began to push it open wider. Elias finally found his scream, but it was a tiny, pathetic sound against the immense, grinding hunger of the mountain, and the silent, falling snow that buried it all from the outside world.